Should be live any second now. All right. Welcome to the Fans in Blue podcast. The title of today's show has been specifically titled as "If Shaw is Picked for the Boxing Day Test." ... And we're going to get to that later, but that's the premise of today's podcast. We really have sunk to a new low in Indian cricket. I have to say that 36 all out was not only unprecedented, but also just a shocker from a team that calls itself the best test side in the world. Ravi Shastri has said that this is the best Indian side ever. I think it's clear that this is not. The side that Sachin, Saurav, Dravid, Sehwag, Lakshman, Zahir, Harbhajan, Kumble. I mean, these are like legends upon legends. If you've got 8-9 guys like that in your side, you can literally put a couple of decent domestic players and you have amongst the best sides that India has ever produced. Now, in saying that though, before we get into the meat of the argument or the discussion today, I want to start with Mr. Devendra Pawar, who had a lot of things to say on our group chat post the 36 all out. So I'll let you have it. What are your reactions?
Hey Nick, hey Kushal. So thanks Nick, as always, for starting the discussion. Well, 36 all out was clearly, an unprecedented performance, like you said, never seen before. And to me, India was quite overwhelmed by the situation. If I have to sum it up, I'll say that we were completely, caught napping there. We lacked planning. And once again, it exposed us to being T20 cricketers, because everything happens in a jiffy. Test match cricket, I don't think India expected to be in that pretty situation. Even a lead of 50 was a great lead to begin with, 200 on the board, and we would have been clear winners in the test match. So quite, caught off guard, and very surprising that we were knocked out the way we did. Batsmen lack technique, as always. We've been talking about it a lot. It's unfortunate, to say the least. I'm lost for words, but I would say we were underprepared. We are not the greatest of planners when it comes to test matches.
Rashid, I'm going to go to you next. Dave says T20 players underprepared. Curious to hear your thoughts, particularly on how we could have combated that line and length from Hazelwood and Cummins differently.
Yeah. No. So firstly, thanks, Nikhil, once again for kind of hosting. I think it was obviously disappointing to kind of all cricket fans, not just Indian fans, actually. I think kind of, for me, it was two things. It was kind of the lack of fight and grit that we didn't display. Of course, it was great bowling. There's no doubt about it. But, this is test match cricket. And if you don't expect top-notch bowling in foreign conditions, don't play test match cricket. And I think we've lost the art of giving a session to the bowlers or playing out a really good spell. Even with Pujara's knock in the first innings, there were loads of people saying, oh, he played too slowly, or he took too many balls, or he didn't rotate the strike enough, etc. Well, the reality was it was the same bowling attack in the first innings on pretty much a fresher wicket. And I think we've just lost the art of kind of giving a session or giving a spell to the bowlers, including the fans, because there were lots of Indian fans who were talking about rotating the strike, Kohli getting frustrated, etc., etc. So I think that lack of fight and grit and just giving a couple of hours, fighting it out is lacking, and that came through.
Kushal, if I had to pinpoint, as a fast bowler yourself, the line and length was phenomenal and it was relentless. That's probably the right, word to describe it. But do you think that we could have done anything different as batsmen, or was it just inevitable?
No. I definitely think, you have to change the rhythm, right? You have to change the sight you're giving the bowlers, right? So I think everyone came in, took a leg guard on the crease, right? And they're bowling in the same channel. Now, say you suddenly come in, a new batsman, and takes a middle, or, it changes something up, the bowler's going to have to react to that, right? So he's going to have to either move his line in towards the stump or just outside, and then it's missing the off, so you can leave more confidently. The other thing they could have done is stood out a little bit of the crease to change the length of the bowlers. Right now they're bowling full good length balls. You could have tried to make it more of a half volley, so they push it back a little bit. We didn't have a plan, man. Like it, I guess like Devendra said, it happened so quickly, and all our guys were so flustered that nobody came in after 3 wickets fell. After that Hazelwood over where both Agarwal and Rahane came, got out, and nobody came in with like something different to do. Like in the first innings, as much as I remember you saying that Ashwin looks like a walking wicket, but when he came out to bat and we had lost like 3 or 4 quick wickets, from 188 to 206, he came in and he tried to play some shots. He played positively. He got a little lucky, I think. One well-timed shot, but it just bounced short of the fielder on the boundary. But he changed things up, and quickly we got 26, 27 runs, and all of a sudden the bowlers are trying something different. It's test match, right? You have to counter what they're doing with something to change their plans so that we can get back to what we want to do, and we just didn't do that.
And
just to add, Nick,
sorry,
I'm sorry.
I just want
sure.
While I have the thought fresh, two things that come in my mind. Number one is I mentioned to you guys I was hanging out with Mohammad Asif, one of Pakistan's greatest fast bowlers, somewhat infamous, but spent a bunch of time with him over the weekend, and I asked him what his thoughts were, being a great swing and seam bowler. And he had a great point. It was really simple. He basically said, look, in Australia, especially with the pink ball, the ball will swing in the first 10 to 15 overs, right? Maybe for the first hour, maximum hour and a half, up to like the 18th or 20th over. He's like, your guys didn't even last that long. So, once you last that long, the ball stops swinging that much, and then it becomes a lot easier to bat on. And I think in the first innings, our guys did it, and that's why Kohli and co, sort of were able to play patient knocks. But what was the need of the hour? The second thing I would, to your point of improvisation, there were a few games back in 2014 when Dhoni was still captain in England. And I think I brought this up where India was getting bowled out for 130, 150 and stuff, and the frontline batsmen had no clue, right? Kohli was struggling that series. None of the other guys really scored any runs, especially in those two tests. And Dhoni came out and scored 60 and 70 from memory. And for me, a guy who has possibly the least textbook technique coming out and scoring that many runs against what you would say was quality bowling in difficult conditions shows that he adapted. And so, I think, going to Dave, my sort of next question before we move on to the next topic, last sort of point here I would say is it's disappointing and it's actually shocking how these guys don't apply themselves. They clearly have the talent. They clearly have been there and done that before on different occasions, but they don't know how to put it together as a side. And that's the difference between the great sides that Australia and the West Indies and, to some extent, South Africa, et cetera, have had. They put it together as a side, and our guys have not done that. And that's the truth. Dave.
Yeah, so Nick, what I wanted to highlight here, it brings back memories of one match, not a test match, but India's semi-final against New Zealand, And the reason I speak about planning is, again, if that match wasn't delayed by a day and played the same day, probably India would have won it outright, with 7 or 8 wickets left. The problem with this side I see is the fortitude. They're not mentally there for the challenge. And whenever there is something to plan on, you find them wanting. And that's exactly what happened. We're not prepared to play sessions here. And if you can't play sessions in test match cricket, you'll always be found wanting. And it was a pity, 36 all out. There's no excuse for it. I'm sure it's not going to happen again in the recent future. But then all it goes to say is this is a weak side mentally, and someone needs to work up there. Forget the techniques. You spoke about Dhoni, not the most technically gifted batsman, but he had the grit. He had the will to stay there, fight it out, take it on his body, and score a decent 50. That's exactly what these guys need to work on. And I hope
Any
with the
quick
change of
reactions?
squad now.
Any quick reactions, Kushal and Rashid, or should we move on to the next section?
I will say this though, we focus on the 36, and in the aftermath of it, I was livid. Like, I wanted to stop watching cricket, but as much as a junkie I am, I'm back and I'm excited for Boxing Day. I will say this though, we started the series really well. I think we put up a good batting performance. We had a plan, we stuck to it, and then we followed that up with the ball. It's just that, on the third day when we had an opportunity to take the game forward, we went in reverse, and how, like, it was impossible, but so that bodes me to think that, if they just are able to mentally put these scars away, we will have, a good chance to still come back in the series.
Rashid, the next sort of short topic goes to you. Should Virat Kohli have stayed with the side, or did he make the right decision to come back to India for the birth of his first child?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Obviously, kind of a hotly debated topic. I think kind of the choice needs to be with the players, whether it's Virat Kohli or whether it's anyone else. I think kind of obviously kind of a birth of your first child is something that's very special. Anyone would want to be there for it. There's no doubt about it. I think kind of much more, probably the last 5 years, we've seen this trend of lots and lots of players leaving tours or, test matches to kind of be there for the birth of their first, second, or third child. I think kind of my fundamental point is kind of almost as a matter of principle is it should be down to the player. And obviously in this case, Virat thinks it's important to be there. It's, a huge moment for him in life, which is never going to come. They're going to be test matches again. So I'm fully with him, fully supportive of the decision he's made, whether that decision is to go or to stay. And equally, obviously, Mohammad Siraj made a decision to stay back in Australia after the death of his father, which again you got to respect. That grit, and it's never easy, to lose a parent. So you got to respect that. And I think Nikhil, I know you have a completely different point of view, but that's my point of view is you respect the decision, and I think we need to support that. So I'm fully supportive of Virat going back.
Kushal?
I think it's a little more subjective. I mean, I do support it. I had 4 months paternity leave from my company, so I can't really complain. Anybody else taking time off when they have a kid, but you have to look at the opportunity at hand. If it was a series like an ODI series or a T20 series or something that was not as important, I would 100% be on board. I was really hoping that no matter what, he would change his mind last minute because, he saw the opportunity at hand. He saw how close we played them in the first innings, and then we crumbled, so we needed him. But, again, like you said, you can't fault him. It's his choice. It's his life, and his decision. And, at the end of the day, we just have to look forward and play without him. I think we'll do well without him.
Dave, I'll also jump in before you. Most of the guys do know my views on this. I'll be as politically correct as I can. Look, I think I do agree with Rashid in a certain respect that the decision should ultimately lie with the player. He has earned that respect. I would say though that given the situation we were in, a captain doesn't abandon a sinking ship. And the reality is 36 all out is a sinking ship. Now that ship could be recovered by others. And over the course of the last week, I've actually come to believe that we might be better off without him. But, in my view, I do think that he probably didn't necessarily face this decision if it wasn't the 36 all out. He would have gone home regardless, and we probably would have been okay with it. But I think given the, gravity of the situation, I just really think that he should have considered it. We'll never know. And pose this question to you, Devendra, after giving my view, which is I actually think that some of the time we look at our players and they're playing scared. They're sort of playing in a way where they're not able to express themselves. And what does that mean? It means that your muscles are tight, you're worried about your place in the side, you're not playing freely, you're not calm. All the things that sports psychologists talk about, when you're playing sport, you need to be in that state of calm, when they call it being in the zone where nothing else matters. I think a lot of guys have really struggled to get there. And one of the reasons is Kohli.
Yeah.
I guess you can't really say it's his fault. It's just the way he is. He expects everyone to be as good as him and as charged up as him, but he possibly can work on that. Actually, I'll take that back. He definitely can work on that aspect of his captaincy. And it's going to be interesting, Dave. It's going to be interesting.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Which is why I feel this is a blessing in disguise for the entire squad, especially Rahane to lead from the front here, and to prove to one and all that Virat, the batsman, might be unmatched, but Virat, the leader, is certainly not indispensable. Uh, all of a sudden you could see Rahane lead from the front. Probably India win a test match from somewhere. A few stellar performances by the youngsters, and more importantly, like you said, the youngsters may, for all you know, start expressing themselves on the field. Uh, there'd be no nervous born, as Ravi Shastri famously mentioned it once. In this
Show
side,
intent.
yeah, show intent, and yes,
I
people
hate
are
that
scared
word,
of Kohli. People are scared of Kohli, barring a few, I guess, who he literally backs to the core, and that would include the likes of KL and a few others. I think everybody else always feels that one or two performances here and there, and we could be out of the squad. Look what happened to Pujara in the past. Look what happened to Rahane. These are two of your most concrete players in the side. When you talk about your match squad, these are the first two, three names you would take on the sheet. And so, yes, people are insecure. This could be a blessing in disguise for the side. And I'm really looking forward to how Rahane leads the squad. News is that Rohit would be straight into the squad, into the 11 when it comes to the Sydney Test match as well. So, looking forward to a fresh Indian side without Kohli, the imposer. And I'm excited.
Kushal?
Yeah, I mean, I think the players, what we saw and what we have seen, especially when, sessions haven't gone our way or things move quickly, like in New Zealand, is the fear of failure, you know. I don't think it's like, I just think that they're afraid to fail. And you can't succeed if you're afraid to fail. You have to be, willing to risk it to, get the results. And in that process, you may lose some, but I really think that it's a mindset of this management team, which for the first 30 tests they didn't have a stable 11, right? They didn't repeat 11 for the first 30-35 tests. So automatically players are already thinking like, hey, am I on the chopping block? Am I on the chopping block? And that creates an insecurity, which leads to playing scared, right? Like which leads to playing for your place. So hopefully this will give us our players some freedom, 3 test matches without the that aggressiveness and the demeanor of Kohli and Rahane getting to really put his stamp on things, at least for this series. And I hope that it just frees up 2 players, Rahane and Pujara, because they are foundational players. And if they are playing scared or they are constantly not sure about their role because they want to play one way but they're being told to play another way, it just and then that leads through the entire team, especially when your senior players are not like charged up and confident, right? I think about it back in 2000s when we had Tendulkar, Dravid, Lakshman, Ganguly, Sehwag. I don't think there was any talk of like, hey, Tendulkar, I don't want you to play this way, or hey, Dravid, I don't want you to play this way. They knew their roles and they played them to perfection. So someone new coming in, like a Yuvraj Singh or a Gambhir, they weren't feeling like, oh, there's a lot of uncertainty here, and then there probably was during the Chappell era. So What I'm trying to say is I think your senior players need to be backed, and they just need to know what they have to do, and they have to go out there and do it. And if they're not given that environment, it just ripples through, through the rest of the guys.
Got it. Rashid, I'm going to go to you next before sort of our next topic, which is your squad for the next test. So put it on paper. Who's in your squad? If you don't have it ready, I can go first. But
Yeah. No. I think it's in. There'll be some false changes, obviously. Obviously, with the injury to Shami, we need to get kind of a replacement in there. So that's kind of the obvious one. I would definitely go with Mohammad Siraj. But if we take it from the top, I would open actually with Vihari, actually, because I'm kind of a fan of Vihari, and I don't think his head should be on the chopping block. I think kind of Kushal actually made a really good point in terms of us chopping and changing constantly, and not because of injuries, because of tinkering and people not being assured of their place in the side. So while it's obviously going to be a short term because Vihari is not an opener, so I would go with Vihari and Agarwal to open. Pujara at 3, Gill at 4, KL at 5. Rahane at 5, KL at 6. Then kind of have Jadeja, Pant, and Ashwin, and then the 3 bowlers.
That's 12. You picked 12.
Oh, it's a lot easier when you can pick 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then for me the toss up is between kind of Jadeja and Ashwin. I think we need 3 fast bowlers. And then that toss-up is between Jadeja and Ashwin. And while Jadeja is definitely probably the most improved cricketer in the last probably 2 or 3 years, I think kind of him batting a number 6 in Australia is probably a couple of slots too high for him. He's not a number 6 batsman, Jadeja, in Australia. So I would kind of then stick with Ashwin.
Got it.
That would be my...
I'll go with mine. So Vihari to me has been largely unimpressive and a guy who's not really going to score more than 50. I know he scored 100 in the West Indies, but the West Indies and their wickets these days, it's not really the same comparison. I am going to go with a slightly more aggressive side. My opening batsmen are KL Rahul and Mayank Agarwal. They both opened in Australia before and they've had some success. So I'm a big fan of people who've been there and done that, not necessarily, having a team full of firsts. I'm going to go with Pujara at 3, and I'm also going to throw in the young lad at 4. Shubman Gill, to me, we've got a whole section coming up on him, but to me, we need to throw him in the deep end and let him swim. I think that guy is a supremely talented guy. Whenever I've seen him get out, when he played the 2 1-dayers in New Zealand last year before the World Cup, when he played the 4, practice innings before the Test match, I think he played the 1-1-dayer as well. Every time it's him getting himself out, not due to a lack of a technical flaw. I do think that Rahane stays at 5. He's a captain and he kind of is going to go back to 5 when Kohli comes back. And then I actually would go with Jadeja at 6 because I think he's fine at 6. If there's a stat that says from the beginning of 2018 until now, he's got the second highest average of any Indian Test batsman of 53. And he gives you that 5th bowling option, which, the MCG, huge ground, 90-yard boundaries, you're going to run a lot. Especially as fast bowlers, you might get tired a bit more. Jadeja's 10 to 15 tidy overs in a day could help you out. And honestly could be the difference between the wheels falling off. I would then go with Pant at 7, in complete contradiction to my first test view of Saha. And the reality is, I think Pant, while not my favorite, he's going to come off once in every 4 innings, like they've said. And I think that his coming off once in every 4 innings is now, to me, clearly proven to be better than Saha's performance in an average innings. Because I thought Saha would be the guy who would save us in a situation like, 20 for 6. But just like Payne saved Australia. But I think that Saha, his days are numbered. I don't know if Pant is the right guy for the future, but he's the guy we have. So I go with him, and then the bowling sort of picks itself: Ashwin, Siraj, Bumrah, and Yadav. Dave?
Yeah, so not too many changes from your side. Rahul and Agarwal definitely open the batting for me. I'd like to protect Gill a touch. So Pujara comes in at 3. Rahane, the skipper, I'd like him to lead from the front and face the new ball a little more than and protect Gill. So Rahane comes in at 4, Gill at 5. Vihari is still a part of my side. I'd like to see him get a couple of more opportunities before we throw the axe at him. Vihari at 6, 7, Pant, the game changer, and mark my words, I believe, uh, come this test match or the next one, he is going to, leave his mark and probably play a pivotal knock somewhere, which will change the game for us in our favor. As far as bowling is concerned, unfortunately, I'd have to leave Jadeja out of this side. Probably in Sydney, we could contemplate depending on the performances. But now you've got Umesh, Siraj. Who else do we have? Ashwin, and who's the
And
other
Bumrah, of
fast
course.
bowler? And Bumrah. Yeah.
Kushal, any changes to that side?
Yeah, so my side's kind of a mix of yours and Devendra's side. I would drop Bihari. I would bring in Jadeja. I would open with KL and Agarwal. I would have Pujara at 3, and I would move Rahane to 4. So that's where I agree with Devendra. I think Rahane needs to take that responsible role of the important number 4 instead of a debutant. And I would give Gill the protection to come in at 5. And then I would definitely play Jadeja at 6. I think he's got all the ingredients to be a successful number 6 batsman for India in all conditions. And his bowling also helps. So he brings another dimension to the selection. It's like him and Pandya are the, two guys that can give us the flexibility to add more batsmen or bowlers depending on conditions. And then I would definitely pick Pant. I always wanted him here. I think that he's, people mix his T20 and ODI performances with his test performances. I think his test performances have shown that he's perfectly suited for this format. The open gaps, where he can drive and get quick runs and hit it through covers and leg side, and there's a lot of open spaces in the field that he can take advantage of that not a lot of other batsmen could take advantage of the way he can. So I'm very bullish on him. And what his keeping lacks is not going to hurt us in Australia. So I think he should have always been there from game one.
And you picked the same bowlers?
Yeah, I mean, Ashwin, he bowled well. He's in good rhythm. He can also bat a bit. He could get you that 15, 20s late down the order and really bowled. I think he bowled. That was one of his best performances overseas. Unfortunately, it was overshadowed by one of the worst performance batting for India. So we'll never remember this test for Ashwin, when we talk about it in his career. And then I would pick Siraj. I think he's got more control. With Shami going out, who gave us that control, the line length, and constant pressure, on with Bumrah on the other side, you had batsmen under pressure. When the next change bowlers come in, the batsmen are like looking to either get a move on or they're not confident. We won't have that now because Umesh is not a consistent guy. He can definitely crank it up and get you the quick wickets like he did with Cummins and I forget who the second wicket was, but he got to, I think, Labuschagne. And so we need someone with more control. I don't think Saini, I mean, we saw him a little bit in the ODIs. His bowling is really up and down. It's straight. There's no lateral movement. There's no, I mean, I don't think he has variation in length that's subtle. It's more like either full or short. Like there's no like in between.
Right.
So I would go with Siraj. And I think he's, I read an article yesterday. I think he's got a good A game record where he's played against a lot of these guys in Australia. He's done well in New Zealand. And Saini's played almost the same number of games and he hasn't done as well. I mean,
So
the difference is massive. I think Siraj averages 21 in those games, and Saini averages 35. So that should tell you that maybe Siraj doesn't have the pace, but he may have the smarts and the guile to be a better bowler.
So that's a good segue to our next sort of mini section here, which is, we were going to go through all the 5 potential changes one by one. Kushal, you kind of basically gave us your view on Siraj. Any sort of final point to add on that?
No, I think it's based on the fact of his performances in the A games in this tournament. In this before the Test series, how he's done in the A games, which is one level below Test level. He's played against Labuschagne, he's played against Head, he's played against 3-4 of the Australian batsmen, and he's been successful against them. And he can move the ball a little bit. He's a little bit more, he's not fast, but he can still crank it up. I think he can get it up to 140.
I like his. I will say I saw his opening spell in the first practice match along with Umesh, and it was a really, really testing opening spell. I mean, he bowled the right length. He bowled the length that Hazelwood bowled when we were all out for 36. If he can repeat that, I am very, very hopeful of Siraj.
And that was with the red ball too, right?
That was with the red ball as well. So, the MCG these days is more of a flat batting track. I would almost expect the Aussies to put that out, hoping they win the toss and just bat us out of the Test match. But, such is cricket, right? Rashid, I'm going to go to you next, which is your view on, I guess we were talking about, was it Pant and Saha that you were going to chat about?
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah. I mean, I was with you, Nick, on the inclusion of Saha, actually. I've seen him play some, going back to the point that I made earlier, just gritty knocks. And I think that's the need of the hour. Someone who can get stuck in, see off a spell. I don't think that's Pant. Yes, as did all the Indian players, he had a terrible game. He dropped a couple of kind of, difficult chances behind the wicket, and he obviously didn't perform with the bat. I think everyone would be very tempted to make kind of wholesale changes given what's transpired. But again, I think the team actually needs to go with certain principles, and that's a kind of one bad performance doesn't kind of kick you out of the team.
I hope we're not applying that same principle to Shaw.
No, I mean, but with Shaw, it's a kind of a litany actually of poor performances, and actually, it's not just the performance, because great batsmen or great keepers can have a bad game, but that doesn't change the fundamental strengths of your game. You can play a poor shot, do something stupid, but again, fundamentally, if your game is solid and strong and you're mentally strong, you deserve a longer rope. I think with Shaw, it's a big no to all of those. I think he needs to get his head straight. He needs to go back and practice, and he's just not there. With Saha, yeah, I think with Saha and Pant, it's a much trickier one. Obviously there's an argument both ways where Pant is the match winner, potentially match winner, and he has played some match-winning knocks. But equally, Saha is solid, gritty. He's got some good runs for the Indian team. I think on balance, I would, even though I was very much a Saha fan, I think given the state of the game and the state of the tour, I think what we do need in the next 3 Test matches is that explosiveness, that ability to change a situation, that ability to turn things around. And I think that's what Pant gives you a little more of. So while it's not an obvious one for me, it's something at least I'm sure people will be debating and thinking about. I think eventually my nod would go to Pant.
Dave, can you talk about why KL Rahul?
I don't think we have much of a choice, do we? Yeah, when it comes to Rahul. So, I mean, almost an automatic selection. Yeah, would have been interesting if both Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul would have been available for this match. And then I would have still, I've got my reasons to hate Rahul because I feel that he's got enough opportunities. Having said that, he's a great talent, make no mistake. But then what is talent without enough decent performances? But here is his opportunity now. I think in all likelihood, If he doesn't perform, you may expect another change in the third match where Rohit comes in for Rahul then. So this is his opportunity. Uh, Personally, I feel if you ask him, he'd like to bat at 4 or 5. But I would like the team management to push him at in that opening slot and protect the youngster by bringing him at 5 instead. So there's no real, option that we have but to bring in Rahul in the side. So it's more a case of having no options than a preference, really.
Yeah, and I'll go quickly on Jadeja versus Vihari before we get into section Gill. I think aside from the fact that we need a fifth bowler, Jadeja gives you that option of a guy who will not go down without a fight. And when you're playing overseas, when you're up against it, you need guys like that. Oftentimes, I see guys like Vihari and Saha, and others. Sometimes I thought even Pant was of the same ilk, maybe even KL Rahul, a lot of guys. But Jadeja is one guy who has not gone down without a fight. And I think we almost have to give him the opportunity to cement that number 6 slot, to make it his own. He scored 3 triple hundreds in first class cricket. Yes, that Saurashtra ground is a road. But at the same time, it's hard to score 3 triple hundreds, right? I mean, Gale scored 2 triple hundreds in Test cricket, and a lot of people forget about that because of his T20 exploits. But he was a pretty decent Test opener for West Indies. I don't think they've had as good an opener since then. Similarly, I think Jadeja can come in and bat 6. I think it adds a whole new dimension to the side. I would almost say that these are our best cricketers. It's purely a function of how do we change the mindset, for guys like Rahul and Pant, and how do we sort of keep Jadeja's focus going, because he seems to be, in a purple patch. I would say that he, for me, is the guy you need to just back for the next 3 tests. Let him play as a batsman, as a batting all-rounder, and then we sort of review after. I mean, we don't really have any seam bowling all-rounders here with us. Hardik is not bowling, so that's sort of my view on Jadeja versus Vihari. Dave, sounds like you have something to say.
My only worry there is by bringing in Jadeja, then you have your 2 vulnerable batsmen at 6 and 7, Pant to follow Jadeja. So I would rather prefer a more solid batsman there. I'm a big fan of Jadeja, make no mistake. But I just feel having Jadeja and Pant both batting in those crucial spots is a little tricky. I'd like to have Vihari just persist with him for a match or 2 and see what he has to offer. I feel he's got the right technique to fight it out at 6. Probably face the new ball as well if there's a second new ball taken, which I believe Jadeja may be found wanting there. But you never know. I'll be excited even if Jadeja plays.
Let me counter that. And I would say if Vihari has to play, he has to open. I don't find a spot for him at 6. He plays instead of KL Rahul, in my opinion. I'm like you. KL Rahul to me is supremely talented cricketer, hasn't done anything to really prove his return to the side. You can't say he's the highest run scorer in the IPL. That means nothing when it comes to playing a test match in Australia. So I think if Vihari has to play, he has to open, like Rashid said. And he opened with Agarwal in the Boxing Day test like 2 years ago.
Yeah. If Rahane is given the option to pick his side, then he may as well leave Rahul out of this playing 11. But I don't think that's going to happen. Shastri is going to do the needful on behalf of Virat. So I don't see that happening where Rahul is out of the squad and Vihari goes up the order.
Kushal, do you have any Kushal and actually Rashid first, then Kushal? Do you guys have any views on sort of Rahul? Does he need to play?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we haven't spoken about is, slightly more radical piece. If Rahul's in the side, get him to keep. And
I had said that 6 months ago, if you remember.
Yeah, and then that gives you another option to play a full-fledged batsman or a full-fledged bowler. So honestly,
then you don't play Pant.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like Pant's keeping, like he's more bloody goalkeeper than a wicket keeper. So, like, I think Rahul is as good or as bad as Pant, as kind of behind the wickets.
So then you have Vihari opening, Rahul at 6, and Jadeja at 7.
Yeah, and then suddenly your batting gets strengthened tremendously with Jadeja at 7, Ashwin at 8. Especially given we'll then have kind of 3 number 11s in Siraj, Bumrah, and Yadav.
I'm going to put it to Kushal with the premise that Bumrah is now no longer number 11. His technique in the 36 all out was phenomenal. I thought
he scored 2 runs.
He really he paved the way for the rest of the guys. To me, he looked like he was going to survive. He had a much higher probability of surviving than Shaw and some of these other guys.
We would have been all out the night before if Bumrah didn't come out and play till the next morning, man. So what was your question again?
Just Rahul versus, Pant versus Vihari and Jadeja. Yeah. I guess you can pick 2 or 3 out of these 4.
Yeah, so I was a fan of Vihari, and I think he had his opportunity in the last match to really prove his grit, right? I mean, everyone says he has grit, but other than a West Indies 100, I haven't really seen his grit. I mean, he started off well when he opened, in 2018, and he played like 80 balls, but he had 8 runs. He did his role, which was to survive and give Pujara a cushion. What?
I said I'm okay with that. I think
no, I'm okay India with that. But what I'm saying is, if you're talking like he's going to be the number 6 for India for the future, and then eventually move up 5 or whatever, he's got to score runs, man. You can't just have cameos or like small. I mean, these are not cameos, but like just vigils where you're just there and you're not scoring. And so I'm not too hot on his long term. And and his peak, like I don't think he has a big peak. I think his peak is what we're seeing.
That's exactly what I was telling you.
Whereas KL Rahul, you've seen in the past what his peaks are. I mean, he's scored runs. He's had 100 in Australia. He's had 100 in England. He's had really good performances on tough turning wickets in India as well. I think he had a period of like 6 or 8 innings where he scored like half centuries when nobody else was really scoring, and he basically held one end together and made us win a couple of series, with 1 or 2 other batsmen. I think he's got a lot of potential. The whole Karan Johar thing, it really threw him off. I feel like his cricket went off for like a year or so. I think the masterstroke was giving him keeping in the limited overs. It really changed his whole approach. It brought him back, his confidence in his batting. And I think this is the right time to bring him in as an opener.
And the captaincy really in the IPL, I thought he matured a lot. I thought he's a really good captain, by the way. I would say he's India's next captain. Sort of unless Kohli makes way soon.
Well, I mean, there's so many guys would have want to be India's next captain. It doesn't happen, but I don't know about that.
I really think they're grooming him to be the next one after, unless Rohit and Rahane take over soon. It's going to be KL Rahul, say 3 to 5 years from now.
Yeah, he has potential, but I mean, you never know what can happen between now and then. What I'm saying is, I think this is the right time to bring him and give him that opening responsibility again. I think he's shown in the past that he can do it, and he won't just give you the 8-ball 80. He'll probably stay there for a couple of hours. I think you'll see him respect the first 15 overs. He's not going to play stupid rash shots, but then he'll expand his game as
he did it last time.
He was in a funk at that time. Remember the Kejo thing happened right before the Australia tour the last time, right? That's when Pandya.
I thought it happened right after.
I thought it happened right before it, and that's when
I can't remember the stage.
But so there was definitely a lot going on then. I think he's a good foil. I still have question marks on Agarwal, to be honest. So
yeah.
I would rather have KL, who I know has done it in the past and who I know that can do it in the future. I know he's been given a lot of chances, but maybe we're just expecting too much. Look at the history of Indian openers. You have 2 guys or 3 guys that you can say that were genuinely great or have good records, right? Sure. KL averages mid-30s. He's got 500s. He's got 10, 12, 50s. He's not bad from any stretch. He's probably the 4th or 5th or 6th statistically greatest Indian opener already. So, we need. So we need to temper our expectations. I think we're expecting a 50 average like Hayden Langer, like those type of guys. We need
Yeah,
to.
I think the reality is, and I'll sort of end this section at this point, but move on to the final section. The reality with KL Rahul or any of the guys is, I think would take a 30 average or a 35 average in Australia, because what that means is over the course of 4 tests, you've scored 250 runs. And these 250 runs means you need at least 2 scores, right? 2 scores of like 60, 80, maybe 100 in there. A few failures and stuff, that's fine. But if you have 2 openers who average, say, 35 and 30, that's not bad. I think we basically have guys who average 5 and 15. So the 50 is a long way away. Final section, and I think possibly the most exciting section of today is Shubman Gill. So I'm going to start off with my view on the guy. I backed him for the 2019 World Cup as the number 4. Got all sorts of abuses after he failed twice in New Zealand. Still think he's a phenomenal, a talent. He's a guy who we really think can develop into a top-notch player, kind of like the Pujara and Kohli level. The Australian commentators are not that easy in giving their praise, and the praise that they were handing out to Gill, was phenomenal. I think Alan Border came out and said this guy is a shoe-in for the first test if I'm an Indian selector. Kerry O'Keefe said they've got one here, India, which means a big deal in Australia. One thing about their culture in cricket there is they don't really build guys up a lot like we do in India, and the fact that they're actually giving so much praise to Gill is almost testament to the ability that he has and sort of the runs that he can make. 2 things I'd say. Number one is why I want him at number 4 is because I really think he's, if he opens, which he does for Punjab, he's likely to fail more often than not. It's that same 250 run type of analogy that I just sort of gave you, right? I think for him, and we Indians are pretty impatient when it comes to cricket, and I clearly Shaw has failed multiple times, so that's not a case of impatience. But I think with him, if you put him in at 4 or at 5, like some of you guys have suggested, it would give him the chance to sort of settle in. He's a shot maker. He can open in Punjab and Mohali, which is a good seeming track but for Indian standards, not really for international standards. But he can't play the same shots he does there at the MCG or any of these grounds. Many of these Aussie tracks may be batting tracks, coming up, the G, the SEG. Brisbane's often sort of a more testing wicket. But the test is usually played in November there. Now it's being played in January, so we don't know what's going to happen. So I really think that regardless of all that, if he opens, there's a strong chance he's going to fail in at least one, if not both innings. I would rather have him at 4 or 5. 4 is my preference. 5 is some of your guys' preference. Let him really score a mountain of runs there and establish himself. And before I go to Dave, I sort of let him make Kohli insecure.
Certainly, yes. I see great potential in this youngster, Shubman Gill. I think he's that long-term stock investment for you. You've got to invest, you've got to persevere, you've got to wait for it to mature, and then you'll start seeing the results. He's your future when it comes to the next World Cup. I think he's going to play a pivotal role there. As far as test matches are concerned, he's got tight technique, he's tall, he's fit, looks impressive. The way he stands at the crease there, plays with a straight back, is good playing the horizontal shots as well, has got all the ingredients of succeeding for you in Australia. So I had anticipated this, that he would only step into the second match, and I think he's got 3 matches here. Even one decent knock here of an 80 odd or 100, I'd be very happy if he scores a ton. Should give him a long rope. I'm really hoping that Gill, the guy that we see our future in, is given enough opportunities, and not just enough opportunities, but consecutive opportunities is what I mean. So I really hope he gets the next 3 matches, gets to play the next 3 matches, and I'm pretty certain he's going to have at least one super impressive inning for us, and
Rashid,
that should tell the story.
Rashid.
Yeah, so I think if we're all on the same page, Gill is, absolutely superb talent, and not just talent. He kind of seems to have the right kind of temperament as well. The one thing that I loved about the few innings I've seen him play is he has time. He has time on his hands, and that's kind of usually kind of a hallmark of a great batsman. He also kind of has the right kind of shots. So he's not a blocker. He'll keep the game moving in the right way. So everyone on the same page in terms of great long-term investment. My point is, given he's a great long-term investment and probably going to be a great servant of Indian cricket for years to come, we need to kind of start playing him where he's going to be playing long-term. The reality is he's not going to be playing at 4 because Kohli's obviously a shoe in there. He's not going to be playing at 5 with kind of Rahane there. So I think kind of he's not going to be playing at 3 with Pujara there. So
He's either 6 or an opener.
Exactly. So I think kind of we need to kind of start as you mean to go on. And even if that means throwing him way into the deep end, if he has the option or he has the kind of history of opening and facing the new ball, I think kind of as hard as it will be, start as you mean to go on and put him up the order, because that's how he's going to play his next 5 years of Test cricket for India, because the middle order is going nowhere except for injuries. So my point is, blood him opening, and or at 6, one of the two. But there's no point playing him at 3, 4, or 4 or 5, because that's kind of never going to be a long-term position for him.
Kushal, let me pose this sort of technical point to you. I saw him in the nets, and I've seen him sort of in the nets of the BCCI posted, and I kind of have watched him pretty closely in the few matches he's played for India or India A. The one criticism I have is he doesn't really lean into his drives. He's a tall guy, and of course that means it's harder as opposed to someone like a Sachin or Virat who are shorter. So it almost looks like his weight is stuck a bit on either the back foot or sort of not really going anywhere. Do you think the Aussies will figure that out pretty quickly, push him back with a couple of bouncers, then get him coming forward, and he might nick off to slip of the keeper?
I'm sure they've already seen videos and they'll try, but I've only seen really one innings of his, which was that ODI that he played, where he started well. He got, I think, top at 6, and then he got out to a rash shot to, I think, Zampa. I think trying to sweep or something.
It was LBW, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, he looked comfortable, man, against the pace bowlers. Maybe it's an illusion that he's not, leaning into it, but, he's getting good, because I think even in the practice games, I briefly saw a few boundaries that he hit, and it didn't look like he was out of balance, or, they were like mistimed, or, just nothing right. They all look like they're perfect shots, So I don't really know if he has a true weakness per se. I think it's more like temperament. He's young. He's just got to like develop into that, building an innings mode and things like that. I'm sure they'll try various things. The Aussies are very, very smart. They know how to bowl. They know how to sniff weaknesses as well, and then they know how to exploit them. So, but I'm backing him to come good here. The point, I think what Rashid was making is, where is he going to play most of his cricket? He opens for domestic for Punjab. But do we see him as an opener or a middle order player for us in the future, right? So if we see him as an opener, then we should open with him. But I don't know if we see him that way. I think we see him as a successor to Kohli or something like that, So yeah, sure, Kohli's going to be around for a while, but we have to start recognizing that Rahane, Kohli, and Pujara are all in their 30s, They're not going to be there for like 7, 8, 9 years where the spot's not going to open up. I would really start with him at 5, because if I see him being as a number 4 once Kohli goes, or, in that mix, I think 5 is the right place to start him. Give him, I think batting at number 4, that's you're taking on like 3 and 4 are your best batsmen, right? And you're taking on responsibility. You're throwing on this young kid in his debut, I don't want him to have that mental thing when he walks in is, hey, man, they've given me the responsibility to replace Kohli. I got to go out and make it happen. That's just putting too much pressure on someone who's so young to, when Rahane can easily deal with that and
I feel
go
like the
in and.
Aussies, do that, and they have guys who are successful. Maybe they're
Well,
made
I
of
mean, look,
other stuff.
Ricky Ponting started his career at number 6 till he moved up to 3. So it's not like, it's not like he was thrown in the deep end. He was treated with kid gloves. So if you feel like this guy is going to be your Ricky Ponting type player, you're better to treat him with kid gloves than to throw him in the deep end and say he doesn't succeed and then it messes with his mind and we could potentially lose another guy that could have been a great player.
Speaking of Ricky Ponting, I'm going to end our podcast for today with sort of going around each person with two things. Number one, you can answer this question in sort of a 0 out of 10 answer, which is how bad was Shaw in the first test match? And the second question is your prediction for the Boxing Day test result. Start with Devendra.
I'd put more than a score there, 1 on 10 for sure. But I seriously feel I want to add this comment here. A better leader, a more patient leader could have saved Shaw from the failure in the second inning. He was too much under pressure. You saw it in the field as well. It was as if, he knew that the writing is on the wall. So it didn't help his confidence. A better leader in probably Rahane or a Sharma would have dealt better with a youngster like Shaw, who was already seen struggling. 1 on 10. And as far as the scoreline is concerned, as optimistic as I am, I think Australia is going to take the second test match as well. But I really hope India can turn the tides there.
Rashid?
I mean, Shaw's a joke. I mean, he shouldn't have been on, to be honest. I mean, it's not his fault in one sense because he really shouldn't have even been on the plane. He's unfit. He doesn't want to, to me, that, he just didn't want to even be at short leg. And that says a lot, actually, when you're playing for the country. So, we can move on quickly from Shaw.
What was your score out of 10?
0. Honestly, he should not have been there. So definitely a big fat 0. I think, sadly, I agree with Devendra. I think there will be a better. I mean, it's hard not to have a better performance given what went on in the first test. But I think we will have. We put up a good show, I reckon. But I think if we lose the toss and we're fielding, we could be in for a long, long day, actually. I'm really looking forward to kind of, the test match, watching the test match tomorrow, but we could be in for a long day if we lose the toss and don't take early wickets. So fingers crossed we win the toss and put up a better batting performance. That's the only chance we have.
Kushal?
So what are you giving 1 point, Devendra, to Shaw?
for being in the squad.
For being so slow in the field. For being so slow in the field that the batsman thought for 2 runs and got run out because he got to the ball so slow.
Yeah.
I mean, he dropped a sitter. He missed. I mean, he batted absolutely poorly, especially in the second innings. Right, you made this mistake in the first innings, and you do the same thing in the second. And like Rashid said, he was fielding a short leg, and the ball was right above him. He didn't even freaking go for it. He was so scared. He just didn't want it. He wanted that game to end quicker than anybody else. Probably Joe Burns, he's in a worse headspace than Joe Burns. I would give him negative points. I mean, if I could, he needs to earn his place back big time. If he wants to ever make a comeback, he needs to go back.
If this guy ever makes a comeback in international cricket, especially in test matches, I think that would be the greatest comeback ever in the history of world cricket.
Right? Well, it depends on the results. Because I'm sure he's going to come back, dude. I don't. These guys rate him very highly in the management.
Like Rahul Tewatia in the IPL. Kushal, really quick, what's your prediction for the scoreline in this game?
I'm conflicted about this, man. When the match ended, I was so dejected. Now I'm pumped. I don't know. I feel like I've gone through a range of emotions where I'm we're going to get slammed to hey, you never know, we could actually pull this off. And I'm in that where I think it's a 50-50. We need some things to go our way, especially early in the match, so that we on a good track and we're not fighting, we're not climbing uphill. But if that happens, I think we'll pull it off, man. I think the guys want to prove that we're not a one man team. Like all the other guys, their pride is like, Kohli's not there. We're going to prove that we can do it, without him.
So we've got two guys who say we're going to lose badly. One guy who thinks we're going to win. I'm going to go, and I'm usually very decisive, but I'm going to go with sort of a hybrid and say if we win the toss and bat, I have a good feeling. And if we win the toss, if we lose the toss and we field, or for whatever reason we field, I don't think we stand a chance. So, on that note, it's been a.
Why do you say that though? Why do you say that? Because look at their batting; it's not settled at all. I mean,
yeah, I just think that
they have Burns and Wade. I mean, 2 walking wickets, man. I mean, I think Siraj can get those 2 bunnies out and get confidence in, and then it's like we're straight into Labuschagne, who didn't look good at all.
I don't think they're going to fail twice. I really think that Smith and Labuschagne will come out and score like mountains of runs in their second innings if they bat first, and that'll just be game over. We'll be chasing.
Labuschagne gave 3 chances before he could get anything, and in the second innings he played wafts. Like he came in, he's mentally not there right now. He's not the same Labuschagne of the previous year.
Yeah, I feel you,
and that's because he's not playing Pakistan and New Zealand.
I feel you, but I do think that we need to win the toss. Otherwise, we're not going to chase a score down, and we're not going to score 500. And the chances of us scoring 500 after bowling Australia out for 250 or 300, that's very, very minimal in my opinion. If we win, we're going to grind out a really, really tough win. All right, boys, I'm going to end the discussion here. Fantastic having all of you. Until next time.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.